For centuries, the sacred symbol of the menorah has illuminated the path of the Jewish people, yet its true meaning remains veiled in mystery. Could the menorah's design reveal hidden truths about the very fabric of creation? What if the form of the seven-branch menorah holds the very key to understanding the nature of divine light and how it interacts with the world around us? Join us as we embark on a journey to uncover the mysteries of light, where science and spirituality converge, and explore how the menorah stands as a bridge between the spiritual and the physical, the infinite and the finite, the past, present, and future. For more than 2,000 years, the image of the seven-branch menorah has stood as a profound symbol, not only signifying the very essence of the Jewish people, but also embodying the infinite divine light that radiates into our everyday reality. And while the menorah's light only manifests through small, flickering flames, each one representing a mere fraction of the boundless divine energy, it reflects a spiritual essence that permeates the entire universe. Yet while this divine light, embodied by the menorah, is ever present, it remains elusive, concealed within the fabric of existence, and hidden from our perception. Even for Moses, the man of God, a figure of such transcendence that Scripture tells us he himself radiated light, the mystery of the menorah proved insurmountable. When the divine command came to build the tabernacle, it was the seven-branch menorah that left Moses truly perplexed. In fact, the Jewish tradition, as recorded in the Midrash, reveals that Moses was so bewildered by the task that he could not comprehend how to shape the menorah. It is said that God provided a prophetic vision, a menorah of fire, illustrating the sacred form that would serve as a vessel for the divine light. But why was this seemingly simple object so difficult to understand? What was it about the menorah that even Moses, with all his wisdom and spiritual clarity, found so elusive? Yes, there was the practical challenge: crafting a menorah from nearly 95 pounds of pure gold, one of the rarest and heaviest metals, yet also one of the softest. But the true enigma may have been its deeper, more spiritual symbolism, a symbolism that seemed to defy reason. More than anything, the menorah appeared to convey a paradox. On the one hand, it was crafted from a single, unified block of gold, but that solid core was to be shaped into 7 branches, 7 distinct pathways that extend from one central, singular shaft. And while the menorah was a symbol of infinite divine light, the very light it represented was, for the most part, hidden from view. Indeed, the fact that the menorah was lit in the sanctuary, out of sight of the public, alludes to the idea that the divine light itself remains mostly hidden within the natural order of the universe. Even when we attempt to decipher what should seem most obvious about the menorah, we find ourselves confronted with ambiguity. Take, for example, the very form of the menorah, the one we all know so well. Despite the fact that Scripture provides us with a detailed description, it leaves out a crucial detail: the shape of its branches. And it is precisely on account of this silence that the paradox emerges. For it is in the form of the menorah's branches that we encounter a fascinating discrepancy between the archaeological evidence and teachings found in the Torah's oral tradition. To best understand this discrepancy, let us first establish how the menorah was portrayed in antiquity. The menorah first emerged as a visual symbol in Jewish art towards the end of the Second Temple period, and most representations from this era are known from Jerusalem and its vicinity. It is believed that the symbol was initially adopted for use by the temple priests, and in particular those associated with the Hashmonean dynasty, a ruling family that played a pivotal role in Jewish history during the period. The first known depiction of the menorah appears on a coin minted by King Matityahu Antigonos, the last ruler of the Hashmonean dynasty, who reigned between 40 and 37 BCE. Other noteworthy depictions include a highly detailed menorah etched on plaster, uncovered in the ruins of an elaborate 1st century house, in an area presumed to belong to priestly families in the old city of Jerusalem's Jewish quarter, a menorah etched on a stone sundial discovered near the southwestern corner of the Temple Mount, a menorah carved on a stone found in the synagogue of the ancient Jewish town of Migdal on the shores of the Sea of Galilee, and of course the most famous image, the grand depiction of the menorah on the Arch of Titus in Rome, a monument commemorating the Roman conquest of Jerusalem. While these various Second Temple era representations display menorahs differing in their level of detail, proportions, ornamentation, and bases, they nevertheless seem to share one commonality, that is, they all appear to have curved branches. However, in contrast to this unequivocal archaeological evidence, dating to the time in which the menorah stood in the sanctuary, the great 11th century Talmudic sage and authoritative biblical commentator Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki, better known as Rashi, seems to contend that the branches of the menorah were not curved, but straight. Upon commenting on the description of the menorah found in Exodus 25, which describes 6 branches coming out of its sides, he writes, "From here and there, in each direction, diagonally, drawn upwards, until they reached the height of the menorah, which is the middle stem." Similarly, the renowned 12th century Torah scholar, philosopher, and physician, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, known as Rambam or Maimonides, also maintained that the menorah's branches were not round, but rather straight. Maimonides' conception of the straight branch menorah remained relatively unknown until the 1960s, when Rabbi Yosef Kapach, a prolific publisher of ancient Jewish scholarly manuscripts, published Maimonides' commentary on the Mishnah, the foundational text of the Jewish oral tradition. Rabbi Kapach's painstaking work involved both cross-referencing several hand-copied versions of the manuscript, as well as examining Maimonides' original handwritten manuscripts, many of which have been housed in the Bodleian Library at Oxford University since 1693. In a section of his commentary on Tractate Menachot, Rabbi Kapach presented a diagram drawn by Maimonides himself. This diagram showed the menorah with straight, diagonal branches extending from the central shaft upward. After carefully comparing the diagram in the original manuscript with hand-copied versions from later generations, Rabbi Kapach concluded, "The common factor in all the manuscripts is that the 6 branches extend from the central shaft in a straight line, all the way to the top, without exhibiting the slightest curvature." In response to Rabbi Kapach's revelation, several halachic scholars who were aware of the ancient depictions of the menorah suggested that Maimonides' straight-branched menorah was not meant to be a literal representation, but rather might have simply been a schematic illustration. But this theory doesn't hold up. You see, while the menorah's branches in Maimonides' diagram are depicted as straight, the top of the base is drawn curved in a rather precise manner, possibly even with the help of a compass. Perhaps the most compelling evidence suggesting that Maimonides purposely depicted a straight branch menorah comes from the testimony of his own son, Rabbi Abraham, who wrote a commentary on the Torah, a commentary not widely known until the 20th century. In this work, Rabbi Abraham writes regarding the description of the menorah in the book of Exodus. The branches extend from the center of the menorah to its top in a straight line, as my father of blessed memory drew it, not curved as others have depicted. This declaration by Maimonides' son lends further weight to the belief that the straight branches were not a mere artistic choice, but a deliberate design. Based on Maimonides' diagram and the assertion of his son that the branches were indeed drawn intentionally straight, the Lubavitcher Rabbi, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, championed this view, firmly asserting that the menorah should be depicted with straight branches. As a result, the followers of the Chabad Hasidic movement construct 8-branched Hanukkah menorahs with straight diagonal branches, mirroring Maimonides' own diagram. In recent years, Rav Chaim Kanievsky, one of the most respected halachic authorities of our time, weighed in, noting that while most depictions show curved branches, Rashi's comment seems to suggest that the menorah's branches were indeed diagonal. So how do we reconcile this discrepancy between the archaeological record and the rabbinic sources? Were the branches of the menorah curved, as seen in ancient depictions, or were they straight, as argued by Rashi and Maimonides? And perhaps most intriguingly, does it even matter? The most straightforward and perhaps logical approach would be to accept one version over the other. The round branches seen in the Second Temple era depictions seem to reflect eyewitness testimony of the menorah as it was in the sanctuary, drawn by those who may have witnessed it firsthand. But what if there's another way to approach this? A way that doesn't have to choose between these two interpretations, but rather seeks to embrace both? Could there be a deeper, perhaps spiritual resolution to this apparent paradox? Perhaps the answer lies not in the physical form of the menorah, but in the light it represents. After all, the menorah is not just a vessel, but a symbol of divine illumination. And light, as we know, is a phenomenon that exists in multiple dimensions, often transcending what the human eye can perceive. For over 2,000 years, the true nature of light has been a subject of intense debate, with two opposing schools of thought competing for dominance. The Greek philosopher Aristotle argued that light was a disturbance in the air, one of the 4 elements he believed made up the fabric of reality. Or in simpler terms, Aristotle saw light as a wave. Meanwhile, his predecessor Democritus, who theorized that everything in the universe was composed of indivisible atoms, argued that light too must consist of tiny particle-like components emanating from the sun. This particle theory gained renewed momentum in the 11th century, when the Arabic scientist Ibn al-Haytham wrote the first comprehensive work on optics, suggesting that light was made up of particles. Then, in 1630, the debate was reignited by René Descartes, who supported Aristotle's view, asserting the behavior of light could be interpreted as a wave-like disturbance in a universal medium. By 1670, Isaac Newton was championing the opposite theory, that light was made up of small, discrete particles which traveled in straight lines. Yet, at the same time, other great minds, Robert Hooke, Christian Huygens, and later Augustin Jean Fresnel, argued that the wave-like properties of light, such as reflection and refraction, pointed to its wave-like nature. By the mid-19th century, the wave model began to dominate, and in 1864, when Scottish physicist James Clerk Maxwell demonstrated that light could be described as an electromagnetic wave, it seemed the debate was over. Light was a wave. However, just when it seemed the mystery was solved, the year 1905 brought a stunning revelation: Albert Einstein's explanation of the photoelectric effect, where electrically charged particles are emitted from a material when struck by light, suggested that light also behaved as though it were composed of discrete particles, which he called photons. Paradoxically, Einstein agreed that the wave theory still held true, even as his particle theory explained the photoelectric effect. Or, as Einstein himself later put it, "It seems as though we must use sometimes the one theory and sometimes the other, while at times we may use either. We are faced with a new kind of difficulty. We have two contradictory pictures of reality. Separately, neither of them fully explains the phenomena of light, but together they do." This strange revelation led to the development of a new counterintuitive understanding. Light, it seems, can be both a wave and a particle at the same time. This phenomenon, known as wave-particle duality, is a cornerstone of quantum mechanics. But what is most fascinating about wave-particle duality is that the manifestation of light as either a wave or a particle is not a fixed attribute of light itself. It is entirely dependent upon the way it is being measured, or more precisely, on the observer. This is best demonstrated by the famous double-slit experiment, which shows not only that light and all matter, in fact, display characteristics of both waves and particles, but it also points to the fundamentally uncertain and probabilistic nature of reality itself, as defined by quantum mechanics. In the double-slit experiment, a light source is aimed at a plate pierced with two parallel slits, and the pattern of light passing through the slits is recorded on a screen behind the plate. Logically, since each photon has a 50% chance of entering either the right or left slit, we would expect to see two distinct clusters of light hits corresponding to the slits. But surprisingly, that is not what we observe. Instead, we see an interference pattern, alternating light and dark bands stretching across the screen. This pattern, characteristic of wave behavior, arises when two waves interfere with each other. The experiment can be conducted using a beam of light, such as a laser, firing individual photons one at a time, or even by shooting solid subatomic particles like electrons. The results remain the same and are indicative of waves passing through the slits. But how is this possible? How can we shoot one single photon or electron at a time and get a pattern consistent with two interfering waves? The most plausible explanation is that as the particles are propelled towards the double-split plate, they don't exist as actual concrete entities, but rather only as an energetic potential, a wave of probability. And so, as the particle approaches the plate, it expresses all possibilities by manifesting itself as a wave passing through both slits at the same time and interfering with itself. However, something extraordinary happens when we conduct what are called which-way experiments, in which we attempt to cheat by detecting which slit the particle actually enters through. When we observe which path the particle takes, we dramatically change the results, and the interference pattern disappears. Instead, we see clusters of hits that align with the behavior of particles. In other words, the very act of observing forced the particle to abandon its etheric existence as a wave of possibility, materialize as a concrete particle, and enter through only one of the slits. This phenomenon, known as the quantum measurement problem, leaves us with a profound realization. The transition from infinite probabilistic potential to concrete physical reality, often called the collapse of the quantum wave function, is fundamentally dependent on a conscious observer. Thus, before being observed, quanta, the subatomic components of light and all matter, exist only as a boundaryless wave of quantum energy. In this state, there is no defined physical reality, only infinite potential. But when a conscious observer directs their attention to the particle, they trigger the collapse of this wave into solid observable reality with specific properties and positions. So, by now we begin to understand that much like the menorah, which in its design seems to reflect a dichotomy, having both round and straight branches, light's very nature is likewise characterized by a paradoxical existence. It exists simultaneously as both a wave and a particle. But what about the non-physical realm? Can light also be described as having dualistic properties when viewed from a spiritual perspective? And if so, could it be that these differing properties of both physical and spiritual light are reflected in the two distinct shapes of the menorah? The sages teach, as above, so below, a principle suggesting that everything in the material world is rooted in the spiritual. From this perspective, it stands to reason that the nature of light would similarly reflect a duality, one that transcends the material and reaches into the essence of existence itself. Before we continue, it is important to emphasize that what we are about to explore should be understood as abstract spiritual concepts, not literal descriptions of the divine or the physical universe. These teachings are deeply allegorical, employing metaphor and symbolism to convey truths that lie beyond ordinary perception. They are intended as tools for contemplation, offering a framework through which the human mind can begin to relate to the infinite and unknowable aspects of the divine. As such, they require a certain level of spiritual and intellectual maturity, and should be approached with humility, reverence, and care. Within the Jewish mystical tradition, the unfolding of creation is described through the metaphor of the Sephirot, 10 emanations through which divine energy progressively interacts with and shapes reality. Each Sephirah represents a distinct attribute or aspect of the divine, forming a dynamic and ordered system through which the infinite enters into relationship with the finite. They function both as vessels that receive divine energy and as channels that transmit it downward, each adapting the infinite light to a specific mode of expression. To further understand how this divine energy structures itself within creation, the teachings describe two fundamental configurations of the Sefirot, Igulim and Yosher, literally circles and straightness. Each of these structural patterns reflects a unique mode of divine governance and corresponds to a particular expression of divine energy, referred to in the mystical tradition as a form of light. The Igulim, or circles, are envisioned as a series of 10 concentric spheres. The outermost circle is closest to its divine source, embodying the most transcendent and abstract level of existence. As the circles progress inward, the divine light becomes increasingly concealed and limited until it reaches the innermost circle, which is furthest from the source and corresponds to the most physical, corporeal level of reality, our material world. This circular mode of emanation corresponds to the divine light known as Or Makif, the surrounding light. It is a divine energy that encompasses all of reality, without entering into it or directly engaging with it. This light represents a transcendent and infinite aspect of the divine, one that permeates all things equally, without division or distinction, like a perfect circle without beginning or end, identical from every angle. It reflects an all-encompassing providence, in which the divine presence is concealed within the natural order of the universe. In contrast, the Yosher, or straight configuration of divine emanations, is visualized as vertical lines or rays penetrating the concentric circles, illuminating them from within. This model corresponds to the divine light known as Ol Pnimi, the inner light. Unlike the all-encompassing Ol Makif, this light flows in a measured, directional manner, gradually diminishing in intensity as it descends. It enters and interacts with each level of creation according to that level's unique capacity to receive it. The straight form of emanation and its corresponding inner light represent a mode of divine governance that is structured, detailed, and quantifiable. Here, the divine will is revealed through harmonizing attributes such as chesed, loving kindness, gvura, judgment, and tiferet, harmony. This inner light enables a relational and interactive connection with creation, an expression of divine energy that can be received, integrated, and actualized within the world. Though distinct in form, Igulim and Yosher are not contradictory. Rather, they offer complementary perspectives on a unified divine flow, one emphasizing the infinite, all-encompassing nature, the other its ability to enter, shape, and sustain finite reality. In this mystical Torah view, divine light is both transcendent and immanent, hidden and revealed. It moves through every moment of existence, from the sacred to the mundane, in a delicate balance between the infinite and the finite, the surrounding and the penetrating. This sacred dance between concealment and revelation, transcendence and presence, is what sustains the universe in balanced harmony. Now that we've explored both the physical and spiritual dimensions of light, we have a deeper understanding of how these concepts are mirrored in the symbolism of the round branch and straight branch menorahs. The round branch menorah, with its sweeping curves, evokes the movement of waves, ripples that expand outward, creating ever-widening circles. This shape mirrors the wave-like properties of light, where energy flows outward in all directions, infinite and undetermined. In the spiritual realm, this pattern corresponds to the circular arrangement of divine emanations, known as Igulim, and the Ol Makif, the surrounding light. Just as waves can travel outward without a clear boundary or end, this form of light symbolizes the boundless, all-encompassing energy of the divine that envelops creation without penetrating it directly. It is the hidden, infinite energy that holds the world together from a distance, undifferentiated and mysterious, much like the wave function of quantum light, which contains infinite possibilities before it collapses into form. In contrast, the straight branch menorah takes on a more defined and directed form. Its vertical lines reflect the trajectory of a particle, focused, precise, and unyielding. This configuration corresponds to the particle-like properties of light and the Yosher, or straight configuration of divine emanations, which channel energy in straight lines. In the spiritual sense, this represents the Ol Pnimi, the inner light, which penetrates creation, entering each layer of existence, and shaping it according to its specific needs. Just as a particle has a defined path, this form of light manifests as concrete, quantifiable reality, breaking down into specific, detailed elements of creation. It is the revealed energy, the light that brings order, clarity, and structure. Despite our deep dive into both the physics and metaphysics of light, we are still confronted with an intriguing conundrum. What was the true shape of the menorah's branches? Were they round, as we have explored, or straight? Yet, this raises an even more perplexing question. How is it that great Torah scholars such as Maimonides, one of the most revered Jewish philosophers and halachic authorities, and Rashi, the foremost biblical commentator, both assert that the menorah's branches were straight? A fundamental principle within Jewish halachic thought is the understanding that a machloket, a halachic dispute, cannot arise when it comes to objective facts or reality. In other words, when discussing matters of fact, there must be a single truth, and any disagreement would be based on misinterpretation, not on an actual divergence of reality. This principle opens up an intriguing possibility when it comes to the conflicting opinions about the shape of the menorah's branches. If we accept that the menorah with the round branches is the one that stood in the sanctuary, rooted in the physical, objective reality we can access, then what are we to make of the views of Torah giants like Maimonides and Rashi, who maintain that the menorah's branches were straight? Could it be that these differing opinions are not about what existed in our reality, but rather about another layer of reality? What if the round and straight branches of the menorah represent two separate yet intertwined realities, realities that correspond to the dual nature of light itself, as both a physical and spiritual phenomenon? But here lies the core question. If the round branch menorah is the one we know from our physical world, the one that stood in the sanctuary, where then does the straight branch menorah exist? In what reality do these straight branches, as interpreted by the great sages, take shape? After the destruction of the temple, the menorah quickly emerged as a powerful symbol of Jewish hope and yearning for redemption. Its image began to appear frequently in Jewish communities around the world, a beacon of spiritual longing and a reminder of the deep desire for the temple's restoration. While most depictions from this period continue to show the familiar round branch menorah, similar to those of the Second Temple period, a curious phenomenon begins to emerge. Occasional depictions of menorahs with straight branches. At first glance, this phenomenon might seem like an oversight, or an accidental artistic variation. Perhaps those creating these depictions lost touch with the menorah's original form, or perhaps straight branches were simply easier to illustrate. But what if there's more to these images than meets the eye? Could these depictions of straight branch menorahs offer us a clue about the nature of reality and the future to which the straight branch menorah might point? In 1928, a remarkable discovery was made in the ancient city of Dura Europos, located along the Euphrates River in modern-day Syria. A synagogue dating back to the 3rd century was unearthed, containing some of the most elaborate and well-preserved wall paintings ever found in an ancient synagogue. These paintings, inspired by scenes from the Hebrew Bible, include 3 distinct depictions of the menorah. 2 of these menorah images reflect the typical design. One appears in a scene depicting Moses standing before the desert tabernacle, and another in what seems to be a portrayal of the Second Temple in Jerusalem. These 2 depictions, like most from the period, represent the round branch menorah. However, it is the third depiction that truly stands out. Situated above the niche that once housed the Torah Ark, this portrayal is unique. The painting shows the facade of the sanctuary, with scenes from the binding of Isaac on the right, and an ornately detailed straight branch menorah to the left. Alongside it are an etrog, a citron, and a lulav, a date palm frond. This depiction of the straight branch menorah in such a central and prominent location offers us a glimpse into a different reality, one that connects past, present, and future. The varying shapes of the menorah depictions on the walls of the Dura Europa synagogue, despite belonging to the same chronological period, are truly fascinating. While one might view this as merely anecdotal, random, or an expression of differing artistic styles, it holds deeper significance for us. The first two menorah depictions seem to represent our current reality, the reality of the round branch menorah. This is a reality in which light has yet to solidify into a defined concrete form. The round branches symbolize the infinite, undifferentiated energy of the divine, a potential still in flux, awaiting the moment it will collapse into tangible, actionable reality. In this world, the full potential of creation has yet to be realized. But the third depiction, which appears directly above the Torah Ark, is deeply significant. The Torah Ark faces Jerusalem, oriented towards the holy city in a timeless expression of hope and yearning. The sanctuary depicted in the center of the painting is a bridge between the past and the future, representing a reality that transcends time itself. It is here the straight branch menorah appears. Its presence speaks not of our current reality, but of a future yet to come. This third menorah, distinct from the others, represents the future reality. The straight branch menorah symbolizes light's particle-like properties, which allow it to manifest as a concrete, definable reality. The straight branches reflect a world in which creation experiences the ol pnimi, the inner light, the divine energy that enters and permeates the world in precise, tangible ways. This is a reality where the divine emanations are no longer hidden, but revealed in a defined, structured manner. The sanctuary in the center belongs to both the past and future, and is accordingly what links all realities together. The straight branch menorah symbolizes ultimate redemption, a future where divine light shines directly into every aspect of creation, revealing the true nature of reality. This vision parallels the quantum wave function collapse, where undifferentiated potential becomes a defined reality upon observation. In quantum mechanics, the observer plays a crucial role in this collapse, bringing clarity to the wave's potential state. Similarly, in the inner dimensions of Torah thought, the world is in a state of concealment, and redemption occurs when humanity awakens to the divine order, acting as a collective observer that causes the hidden truth to emerge. This spiritual awakening will transform reality, uniting the sacred and the mundane, and bringing the world into its true redeemed state. Just as observation defines the quantum state, humanity's alignment with divine truth will catalyze the collapse of the current fragmented reality into a unified, illuminated one. Perhaps this is the vision of the world foretold by the prophet Isaiah, when all shall see eye to eye when the Lord brings back Zion. In this world, the name Israel, which can be read as Yashar El, meaning straight is the Lord, will resonate with greater relevance than ever. The divine light will no longer be hidden, but direct, accessible, and unmistakable. In this understanding, The shift from the round branch menorah to the straight branch menorah is more than a question of artistic style or tradition. It is a symbolic marker of the cosmic transition from a reality defined by infinite potential to one defined by manifest truth. In this final reality, all will be revealed. The Or Makif, the surrounding light, will no longer remain hidden in the background of creation, but will give way to the Or Pnimi, the inner light, which will illuminate every aspect of the world with clarity and purpose. It is a world where the divine light will shine unimpeded, where the true nature of reality will be known to all, and where mankind's universal hope for redemption will be fulfilled in a profound and lasting way.